The message arrived at exactly 3 in the morning, Geneva time. Lieutenant Kevin Park was the first to see it. He sat alone in the communications center of the United Nations Space Command, drinking his 4th cup of coffee and watching the stars through the reinforced window. The night had been quiet until then. His console beeped once, then twice. Then it began screaming with alerts that he had never heard before in his 12 years of service. Kevin set down his coffee and leaned forward. The message was coming through on the diplomatic channel, but it was tagged with every priority marker that existed. He opened it with shaking fingers. The words on his screen made his blood turn cold. He reached for the emergency phone and dialed the number he had memorized but never expected to use. 3 rings later, a tired voice answered. "This better be important, Lieutenant." "Admiral Monroe," Kevin said, his voice barely steady. "You need to come in right now. The Galactic Concord just declared war on Earth." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I will be there in 20 minutes, Admiral Grace Monroe said. "Wake up everyone on the priority list. And Kevin, make some more coffee. It is going to be a long night." Grace Monroe arrived in exactly 18 minutes. She was a tall woman in her early 60s, with silver hair cut short and eyes that had seen more battles than most people could imagine. She had commanded ships, led fleets, and buried too many friends. Nothing surprised her anymore, or so she thought. She walked into the command center to find it filling with officers and officials, all of them looking at the main screen where the declaration was displayed. Ambassador Daniel Cruz stood near the front, reading it aloud to those who had just arrived. The Galactic Concord, representing 47 sovereign species and over 800 billion citizens, hereby declares a state of war against the species known as humanity and their home planet designated Earth, Daniel read. His voice was calm, but Grace could see his hands trembling slightly. "Your kind has expanded too quickly. You have refused to share technologies that could benefit all species. Your aggressive nature poses a threat to galactic peace. You have been judged and found dangerous. Our combined fleet of 12,000 warships will arrive at your solar system in 14 standard days. Surrender is your only option. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your species. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification." The room fell silent when he finished. Grace looked around at the faces of her officers. She saw fear in some of them, anger in others. A few looked like they might be sick. She understood. The numbers were terrifying. 12,000 warships against Earth's registered fleet of 800 vessels. It seemed impossible, but Grace Monroe knew something that the Galactic Concord did not. "Is that all?" she asked, walking to the front of the room. Daniel turned to look at her. "Admiral, did you hear what I just read? They are bringing 12,000 ships. We have 800. This is not a battle we can win." Grace smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was real. "Ambassador Cruz," she said, "how long have you served as Earth's representative to the Concord?" 7 years, Daniel replied, confused by the question. "And in those 7 years, did any alien species ever ask to inspect our military facilities? Did any of them ever visit our shipyards or weapons research centers?" Daniel thought about it. "No, they considered us too primitive to be worth studying. They only cared about our cultural exports. Music, films, art. They thought our military was a joke." "Exactly," Grace said. She turned to face the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I need everyone below clearance level 7 to leave this room immediately. What I am about to say does not leave these walls." There was movement as nearly half the people in the room filed out. When the doors closed, only 12 people remained. Grace walked to the main console and entered a code that Kevin had never seen before. The screen changed, showing a completely different picture of Earth's military strength. Kevin felt his jaw drop. The 800 ships in our registered fleet are decoys, Grace explained. They always have been. The real fleet has been under construction for over a century, hidden in places the Concorde never thought to look. As of this morning, we have 6,400 combat-ready vessels. Another 800 are in final construction and will be ready within 10 days. Daniel stared at the screen. That is impossible. Where did we hide all of this? How did we pay for it? Black budgets, Grace said simply. Every major nation on Earth has contributed to this project since we made first contact. We knew this day would come eventually. Aliens do not share the galaxy with species they consider threats. So we prepared, quietly, patiently, for over 100 years. She changed the screen again, showing weapon specifications that made Kevin's head spin. Gravity cannons, phase shift missiles, ships that could fold space and appear anywhere in seconds. We also reverse-engineered every piece of alien technology we could get our hands on, Grace continued. And then we improved it. Our weapons are 2 generations ahead of anything the Concorde has. They do not know this because we have never used them. We have been playing weak on purpose. The room was completely silent. So what do we do now? Daniel asked finally. Grace turned off the screen and faced the group. Now we respond to their declaration. Kevin, open response channel 7. Kevin found the channel and activated it. Ready, Admiral. I want you to compile something for me, Grace said. Go through our cultural archives and find every recording you can of humans laughing. Crowds at comedy shows. Children playing. Friends sharing jokes. I want thousands of voices, all laughing together. Then send that to the Concorde as our official response. Kevin blinked. Just laughter? Nothing else? Nothing else, Grace confirmed. Let them wonder what we know that they do not. Let them spend the next 14 days asking themselves why humanity laughed at their declaration of war. Fear is a weapon too, Lieutenant. And right now, confusion is our greatest ally. Daniel shook his head slowly. They will think we are insane. Good, Grace said. Underestimating us is what got them into this mess. Let them keep doing it until the very last moment. By the time they realize their mistake, it will be far too late. She looked out the window at the stars that would soon be filled with enemy ships. They wanted a war, she said quietly. They really should have done their homework first. The Grand Council Chamber of Station Velith Prime was the largest artificial structure in the known galaxy. It had been built 3,000 years ago to house the representatives of every species in the Galactic Concorde. The ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed inside on humid days. The walls were lined with the flags of 47 different civilizations. Today, every seat was filled. Over 2,000 delegates had gathered to witness history. The final destruction of humanity was about to begin, and everyone wanted to watch. High Speaker Zalveth stood at the center podium. She was an insectoid creature, tall and thin, with 4 arms and eyes that glittered like black diamonds. Her species had led the Concorde for 800 years. She had personally overseen the conquest of 11 primitive worlds. Humanity would be the 12th. The human response has arrived, she announced to the chamber. A voice echoed through the vast space. Let us hear what the doomed creatures have to say. War Marshal Korath stepped forward to play the message. He was a massive reptilian creature covered in green scales, with teeth like knives and claws that could tear through metal. He commanded the combined fleet of the Concorde that had never lost a battle in his 2 centuries of service. The idea of losing to humans was laughable to him. He pressed the button to play. Earth's response. The chamber filled with the sound of laughter. It started softly, like a few people chuckling at a joke. Then it grew louder. More voices joined in. Soon there were hundreds of voices, then thousands, all laughing together. The sound was warm and genuine and completely unexpected. The delegates looked at each other in confusion. This was not the surrender they had expected. This was not a plea for mercy or a desperate attempt at negotiation. This was just laughter. The recording played for exactly 3 minutes. When it ended, the chamber was silent. "What is the meaning of this?" Zalveth demanded. "Is this some kind of primitive humor? Are they mocking us?" Korath's scales had turned a darker shade of green, a sign of anger in his species. "They are insane," he declared. "The humans have lost their minds from fear. They laugh because they cannot accept reality. It changes nothing. Our fleet will crush them all the same." The delegates began to murmur in agreement. Yes, that must be it. The humans were simply too primitive to understand the danger they faced. Their laughter was the desperate noise of a species facing extinction. The one voice spoke up from the back of the chamber. "I am not so sure." Everyone turned to look at the speaker. She was a small creature from an amphibian species, with smooth blue skin and large golden eyes. Her name was Observer Silith, and her job was to study other civilizations. She had spent her life visiting alien worlds and learning their secrets. "What do you mean?" Zalveth asked, her tone sharp. Silith walked slowly toward the front of the chamber. "I visited Earth once, about 40 years ago. I spent 2 of their years there, watching them, learning about them, and I saw things that troubled me." Korath snorted. "Troubled you?" "They are primitives. They only developed space travel 200 years ago. What could possibly be troubling about them?" "Their history," Silith said quietly. "Humans have only existed for a short time compared to our species. But in that short time, they have fought more wars than any civilization I have ever studied. They have invented more weapons of destruction than all the Concord species combined. And every time they faced extinction, they survived. Every single time." The chamber grew quiet again. "I also learned about something they call black sites," Silith continued. "Hidden facilities where they develop weapons and technologies in complete secrecy. Their own citizens do not know these places exist. Their own governments deny their existence. But they are real. I could never find out what was inside them, but I know they are there." "You are afraid of shadows," Korath said dismissively. "Our intelligence reports show that Earth has only 800 warships. We have 12,000. The numbers do not lie. The numbers show only what the humans want us to see," Silith replied. "That is what worries me. Humans are masters of deception. They lie to each other constantly. They lie to themselves. Why would they not lie to us?" Zalveth raised one of her 4 arms for silence. "Observer Silith, your concerns are noted. But we have made our decision. The fleet has already launched. In 13 days, humanity will be destroyed. There is no force in the galaxy that can stand against 12,000 warships." Silith looked at the high speaker for a long moment. Then she simply nodded. "I understand. I hope you are right. I truly do." She turned and walked toward the exit. At the door, she paused and looked back at the assembled delegates. "But I will not be here to find out," she said. "I am leaving for the Outer Rim tonight. If I am wrong, I will return to celebrate with you. And if I am right, I will be far enough away to survive whatever comes next." She left without another word. The chamber erupted in noise after she was gone. Delegates laughed and shook their heads. Korath called her a coward. Zalveth declared that her fears were unfounded and would be proven wrong within 2 weeks. But some of the delegates had stopped laughing. They thought about what Silith had said. They thought about the confidence in that human laughter. And deep in their hearts, a small seed of doubt began to grow. Korath walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, his fleet was moving toward Earth at maximum speed. 12,000 warships, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. It was unstoppable. And yet, he could not get that laughter out of his head. Why had they laughed? What did they know that he did not? He pushed the thoughts away. It did not matter. Numbers were numbers. Power was power. In 13 days, humanity would learn that laughter could not stop plasma cannons. He was absolutely certain of this. Far across the galaxy, on a small transport ship heading for the Outer Rim, observer Silith sat alone in her cabin. She played the human laughter one more time and listened carefully. It was not the laughter of madness. It was not the laughter of despair. It was the laughter of someone who knew a secret. Someone who could not wait to share the punchline. Silith turned off the recording and looked out her window at the passing stars. "I hope I am wrong," she whispered to herself. "But I do not think I am." The transport pod descended through the darkness toward the surface of Earth's moon. Admiral Grace Monroe watched through the small window as the gray landscape grew closer. There were no lights below, no buildings, no signs of life at all. But she knew better. The pod touched down on a flat plain of dust and rock. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ground beneath them began to move. A massive section of the lunar surface slid aside, revealing a shaft of light from below. The pod sank into the opening, and the ground closed above them. Grace had seen many impressive things in her life, but Site Omega still took her breath away. The underground facility stretched for kilometers in every direction. Massive hangars held rows of warships that gleamed under artificial lights. Factories produced weapons that the galaxy had never seen. Thousands of workers moved between buildings, all of them focused on a single purpose. Director Helen Marsh was waiting when Grace stepped off the pod. She was a small woman with white hair and sharp eyes behind thin glasses. She had run Site Omega for 30 years, and every secret of humanity's true military power lived inside her head. "Admiral Monroe," Helen said with a thin smile, "welcome to what the Concord does not know exists." "Director Marsh," Grace replied, "I have seen the reports, but seeing it in person is different. Follow me. There is much to show you." They walked through the facility together. Helen explained everything as they moved. "We started construction 112 years ago," she said, "right after first contact. The moment we met the Concord, we knew they would eventually try to destroy us. That is what powerful civilizations do to weaker ones. So we decided to stop being weak." They entered a massive hangar where a warship was being loaded with weapons. The ship was sleek and black, designed to be invisible against the darkness of space. "This is the Nightfall class," Helen said. "We have 2,000 of them. They can fold space and appear anywhere in the solar system in seconds. The Concorde sensors cannot detect them until they are already firing." Grace nodded, impressed. "And the weapons?" Helen led her to another section of the facility where Chief Engineer Tony Salazar was working on a massive cannon. He was a large man with grease-stained hands and a smile that never seemed to fade. "Admiral," Tony said, wiping his hands on his shirt. "Good to finally meet you. Let me show you what we have been building." He gestured to the cannon. "This is a gravity cannon. It creates a focus point of gravitational force that can crush anything in its path. Shields do not stop it. Armor does not stop it. Nothing stops it. One shot can destroy a ship the size of a small moon." "And the phase shift missiles?" Grace asked. Tony's smile grew wider. "Those are my favorites. They shift out of normal space, pass through any obstacle, and then shift back inside the target. You could have a shield a kilometer thick, and it would not matter. The missile appears inside your ship and detonates." Grace felt something she had not felt in a long time: hope. "How many ships do we have ready?" she asked. 6,400 as of this morning, Helen answered. Another 800 will be finished before the Concorde fleet arrives. We also have defense platforms hidden throughout the solar system. Weapon satellites disguised as asteroids. Automated fighter drones stored in the rings of Saturn. Everything the Concorde knows about our defenses is wrong. They continued walking until they reached a quieter section of the facility. A young woman in a security uniform stood guard at a door. A name tag read Sergeant Linda Cole. "Ma'am," Linda said, saluting as they approached. Grace stopped and looked at the young sergeant. "How long have you been stationed here, Sergeant Cole?" 3 years, ma'am." "And did you know about any of this before you were assigned here?" Linda shook her head. "No, ma'am. I thought our military was exactly what the public knew about. 800 ships and some defense stations. Finding out the truth was the biggest shock of my life." Grace turned to Helen. "Why keep it secret from our own people? Would it not be better if everyone knew we were safe?" Helen sighed. "Because humans cannot keep secrets from each other. We talk, we share, we put everything on our networks. And the Concorde has been reading those networks since we invented them. If our citizens knew the truth, the aliens would know within a day. So we kept it hidden from everyone. The only way to fool the Concorde was to fool ourselves first." "It seems cruel," Grace said quietly, "letting billions of people believe they were defenseless." "It was necessary," Helen replied. "And soon it will not matter. Once this war is over, everyone will know. The secret will be revealed. But first, we have to win." They reached the central command room, where massive screens showed the position of the Concorde fleet. 12,000 dots moving slowly toward Earth. 10 days away now. What is the plan? Grace asked. Helen pointed to the screen. "We let them reach the outer edge of the solar system. We let them encounter our decoy fleet first. They will destroy 800 ships and think they have won. Then, when they move toward Earth to finish the job, we reveal everything. And then, Helen said, her eyes hard, we show them what humanity is really capable of. We show them why they should have left us alone. And we give them a choice. Surrender or die." Grace stared at the screen for a long moment. 12,000 enemy ships. Billions of alien soldiers. The largest military force ever assembled in history, all coming to destroy her home. And for the first time since this crisis began, she was not afraid. "Wake up the fleet," she said. "All of them. It is time for humanity to stop hiding." Tony Salazar laughed. "I have been waiting over a century for someone to say that." Across Site Omega, lights began to flicker on in hangars that had been dark for decades. Engines roared to life for the first time. Crews ran to their stations. The hidden strength of humanity was finally waking up, and out in the darkness of space, completely unaware of what was waiting for them. The Concorde fleet continued its journey toward Earth. They thought they were coming to end a war. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. The Concorde fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system on the 14th day. War Marshal Korath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory, and watched as his ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. 12,000 warships spread across the darkness like a swarm of angry stars. "Scan for enemy vessels," Korath ordered. His sensor officer worked the controls. "I am detecting approximately 800 human ships near Neptune's orbit, War Marshal. They appear to be forming a defensive line." Korath laughed. It was a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the bridge. 800 against 12,000. This will be over in hours. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, advance. Destroy every human vessel. Leave nothing alive. Today we end the threat of humanity forever." The fleet moved forward like a wall of death. Near Neptune, Captain Raymond Shaw watched them come. He stood on the bridge of his battleship, the endurance, and felt surprisingly calm. He knew his ship was a decoy. He knew he was meant to die here, to sell the illusion that this was humanity's only defense. But he also knew what was hiding behind him. "All ships," he said into his communicator, "hold the line as long as you can. Make them work for every kilometer. And when the time comes, trust in the plan." The two fleets met in a storm of fire and light. Plasma bolts filled the space between them. Missiles streaked through the void. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes that would have blinded anyone watching without protection. The decoy fleet fought bravely, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. One by one, human ships were torn apart by the overwhelming firepower of the Concorde. Captain Shaw watched his friends die around him, knowing it was all part of the strategy. After 2 hours, only 50 human ships remained. Korath watched the destruction with satisfaction. "This is easier than I expected. The humans are even weaker than our intelligence suggested." He turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to High Speaker Zalveth. Tell her the human fleet has been destroyed. We are proceeding to Earth for final conquest." The Concorde fleet reformed and continued toward the inner solar system. They passed Neptune. They passed Uranus. They approached Saturn and its beautiful rings. And then everything changed. "War Marshal," the sensor officer said, her voice suddenly uncertain. "I am detecting anomalies." "What kind of anomalies?" "Ships, sir. Thousands of them. They are appearing from behind Saturn's moons, from within the rings, from everywhere." Korath moved to the sensor station and looked at the screen. His blood turned cold. Human ships were emerging from hiding places all around them. They rose from asteroid fields. They flew out of the shadows of moons. They seemed to materialize from empty space itself. And there were so many of them. How many? Korath demanded. The sensor officer's hands were shaking. "Over 7,000 vessels, War Marshal. And more are still appearing." Before Korath could respond, a human voice came through the communication system. It was calm and clear and carried a weight of absolute confidence. "This is Captain Raymond Shaw of the Earth Defense Fleet. You wanted war. Let us show you how humans wage it." The hidden fleet opened fire. Pilot Megan Torres was at the front of the attack. She commanded a squadron of 50 fighters, small and fast ships designed to slip past enemy defenses. Her target was the Eternal Victory itself. "All wings, stay tight," she ordered. "We are not here to destroy the flagship. We are here to disable it. Command wants Korath alive." Her squadron dove into the chaos of battle. Alien ships tried to intercept them, but human weapons were faster. Gravity cannons tore through Concorde vessels like they were made of paper. Phase shift missiles appeared inside enemy ships and detonated, leaving nothing but debris. The technology gap was devastating. The Concorde had expected to fight a primitive species with basic weapons. Instead, they faced a civilization that had spent a century preparing for exactly this moment. Torres and her squadron reached the Eternal Victory and began their attack run. They targeted the engine systems, the weapon arrays, the shield generators. Each shot was precise and calculated. They were not trying to kill. They were trying to capture. On the bridge of the Eternal Victory, alarms screamed without end. Korath watched in horror as his mighty fleet was torn apart. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were being destroyed in seconds. How is this possible? He roared. Where did these ships come from? Where did these weapons come from? No one had an answer. A massive impact shook the flagship. The lights flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in, bathing the bridge in red light. "Engine power at 0, someone reported. "Weapons offline. Shields collapsed. We are dead in space, War Marshal." Korath stared at the screen showing the battle. His fleet, the largest military force in galactic history, was being annihilated. Over half his ships were already gone. The rest were trying to retreat, but human vessels were faster and cut off every escape route. 6 hours after it began, the battle was over. Of the 12,000 ships that had arrived to destroy humanity, only 1,200 remained. And every single one of them was surrounded by human vessels with weapons aimed at their hulls. Captain Shaw's voice came through the communication system again. War Marshal Korath, your fleet has been defeated. Your ships are disabled. You have 2 choices. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated as prisoners of war with full rights and protections. Refuse, and we will destroy what remains of your fleet. You have 5 minutes to decide. Korath sat down heavily in his command chair. His scales had turned pale gray, the color of shame in his species. He had never lost a battle in 200 years. Now he had lost everything. How? He whispered. How did they hide all of this? No one answered. The 5 minutes passed in silence. Korath thought about fighting to the death. He thought about the honor of his species and the pride of the Concord. But he also thought about the thousands of soldiers on his surviving ships who deserved the chance to live. He reached for the communication controls. This is War Marshal Korath of the Galactic Concord, he said, his voice hollow. We surrender. Across the battlefield, human crews cheered. They had faced the largest military force in history and won. They had protected their home against impossible odds. And somewhere far away, on a small transport ship in the Outer Rim, Observer Silith received the news and closed her eyes. I knew it, she said softly. I knew they were dangerous. But even she had not imagined just how dangerous humanity could be. Station Velith Prime had never been so quiet. The Grand Council chamber, which had echoed with confidence and laughter just weeks ago, now felt like a tomb. The flags of 47 species still hung on the walls, but they seemed dimmer somehow. Smaller High Speaker Zalveth sat at the central podium and waited. Around her, the delegates who had cheered for humanity's destruction now sat in fearful silence. Their greatest fleet had been crushed. Their mightiest warrior had been captured. And now the humans were coming, not with an invasion force, as everyone expected. Not with weapons ready to burn their worlds. The humans were coming with a diplomatic delegation. No one knew what to make of it. The doors at the far end of the chamber opened. Admiral Grace Monroe walked in first, wearing her dress uniform with every medal she had earned over 40 years of service. Behind her came Ambassador Daniel Cruz, carrying a simple folder of documents. They were followed by a small group of aides and, at the very back, War Marshal Korath in restraints. Every eye in the chamber followed them as they walked to the center of the room. Grace looked around at the assembled delegates. She saw fear in their eyes, hatred in some, confusion in most. These were beings who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had never been defeated. They had never faced judgment from a species they considered inferior. Now, they were waiting to hear their fate. Ambassador Cruz stepped forward and opened his folder. The room tensed, expecting demands for territory, resources, slaves, expecting the cruel terms that the Concord itself had imposed on conquered species for centuries. The following are humanity's terms for peace, Daniel said, his voice clear and steady. First, humanity will be granted full and equal membership in a reformed galactic Concord, with voting rights equal to any other species. Second, all trade barriers between human space and Concord space will be removed. Third, all humans currently held in Concord territory will be released immediately. Fourth, a mutual defense treaty will be signed, requiring all member species to come to each other's aid in times of crisis. He paused and looked around the room. That is, all. The silence that followed was absolute. Zalveth stared at the ambassador as if he had grown a second head. That is all? You defeated the largest fleet in galactic history. You captured our war marshal. You could destroy every world in this alliance if you wanted to. And you ask only for equality and trade? Yes, Daniel said simply. Why? The question came from a delegate in the back, a being covered in fur with wide, frightened eyes. Why not take more? Why not punish us for attacking you? Why not make us your slaves as we have done to others? Grace stepped forward to answer. Because we never wanted war. We never wanted conquest. All we wanted was to be left alone to grow and explore and live. You forced us to reveal our strength when we would have preferred to keep it hidden. You made us fight when we would have preferred to trade. Now that the fighting is over, we see no reason to continue hurting each other. Korath spoke up from his position at the back. His voice was rough and tired. I do not understand. We came to destroy your entire species. How can you show mercy after that? Grace turned to face him. Because mercy is not weakness, War Marshal. It is strength. The strong can afford to be kind. The secure can afford to forgive. We could burn every world in this alliance, but what would that make us? We would become exactly what you feared we were. Monsters, conquerors, destroyers. She shook her head slowly. That is not who we are. We are survivors. We have faced extinction many times in our short history, and every time we have found a way through. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars among ourselves. We survived because we learned that cooperation is stronger than conquest. Friends are more valuable than slaves. Peace is better than victory. The chamber remained silent, but Grace could see that some of the delegates were listening. Really listening. Your species lived for hundreds of years, she continued. You plan in centuries. You have time to wait, to prepare, to conquer slowly. But humans live short lives. We have maybe 80 years if we are lucky. We learn fast. We build fast. We adapt faster than any species you have ever encountered. And because our lives are so brief, we value them deeply. Every life matters to us. Even yours. Daniel took over again. We are offering you something the Concord has never offered to a defeated enemy. A chance to start over. A chance to build something better than what came before. An alliance of equals instead of a hierarchy of masters and servants. Zalveth finally found her voice. And if we refuse? Grace's expression did not change. Then we go home and you go home and we see what happens next. We will not attack you. We will not invade your worlds. But we will remember that you chose conflict over cooperation. And the next time we meet, things may be different. The threat was subtle but clear. Humanity was offering friendship, but they had proven they could also offer destruction. The choice belonged to the Concord. Zalveth looked at her fellow delegates. She saw the fear that had ruled them for weeks beginning to fade. In its place was something else. Curiosity, hope, the possibility of a future. That was different from everything they had known. She turned back to the human delegation. We accept your terms. The tension in the room broke like a wave against rocks. Delegates began talking among themselves. Some were relieved. Some were confused. A few seemed almost excited. The galaxy was about to change, and no one knew exactly what that would mean. The treaty was signed within the hour. Hands and claws and tentacles all pressed against the document that would reshape civilization. As the ceremony concluded, a familiar figure approached Admiral Monroe. Observer Silith had returned from the Outer Rim when she heard the war was over. I knew you were dangerous, Silith said quietly, but I never imagined this. You could have destroyed us all. Why did you choose peace? Grace looked at the blue-skinned alien for a long moment before answering. Because we have seen what happens when species choose destruction over cooperation. We have done it ourselves many times in our history, and it never leads anywhere good. War is easy. Peace is hard. But peace is the only thing worth fighting for in the end. Silith considered this. You are a strange species. We prefer to think of ourselves as complicated, Grace replied with a small smile. Ambassador Cruz joined them. The treaty is official. Humanity is now a full member of the Galactic Concord, equal partners with 47 other species. 48, Silith corrected. You are the 48th. Grace nodded. Then let us hope we can live up to the responsibility. We did not ask for this role, but we will do our best to deserve it. They left the chamber together, human and alien walking side by side toward an uncertain but hopeful future. Across the galaxy, the news spread faster than light. The species that had laughed at war had won peace. The primitives had proven themselves the most advanced civilization anyone had ever known. And humanity, after centuries of hiding in the shadows, had finally stepped into the light. They had shown their strength. Now they would show their heart, and the galaxy would never be the same again.